Welcome to Do Things Wells.
My name is Wells. I'm working on a Kubota 4500. Not sure exactly the year. They built it between 78 and 85. The PTO has ground drive PTO, and then it has independent or live PTO, however they call it. Isn't working. It'll engage in ground drive, but when you move the lever back, it'll be on your left-hand side. I'll show you that in a second. To live PTO, it just falls back. It doesn't click into gear. So to do that, I'm going to take off the top cover, like underneath the seat, where the 3-point arms hook up to, and see what I got going on in there. So one of the things we got going is this is the PTO shift lever. That's neutral position here. Forward is ground drive position. And then you should be able to just go back one little notch, the same as it is from here to here. And it should go in the live, but it just falls all the way back, which shouldn't happen that way. I have the sister tractor over there, the 4050. And so that's one of the reasons I know how the shifter should work. So the first thing we did was we removed the seat. That's just 4 bolts, 4 nuts, a 17mm head. And then to do the top cover, it's actually fairly easy. We removed the 2.inch lift arms pins right here. Just pull that pin out, slide it out, and then set the arms down. Get both sides. Kind of clears this up a little bit. Removed the hydraulic hoses. We had to loosen the clamps on these 2 hoses because they had to be able to spin the hose. There isn't a swivel. They connect in on this side for the remotes that go on this side. And then for this side under here, they did have a swivel on them, so I didn't have to loosen those brackets on the back. That bolted in right here on these 2 with big long bolts. These would go down in there like that. That held that frame in over there. Then we loosen all these down in here. Here, there's some long bolts on this side, short bolts on that side. Studs here and under there. Sorry, that was my breaker bar. And then studs in the front. Then, unlike some of the other tractors like that blue one, the pump, there's no linkage up underneath here. You gotta take this part of the hose off. This is the return from the hydraulic pump. Sorry, gotta get you a picture in here. Right back there, which is connected right there, right underneath these arms here. And then you disconnect it basically right here, that way it would drop down. And then if you follow this line out, it's the return from your pump. Here's the hydraulic pump, and this is the suction line. Comes through the filter, top of here, which is driven off of your fuel pump. And then this is your steering. It pops up. There's a better reference from down here. Coming up pretty even. So I'll pull that up. It's not really that heavy. At least I think so. It doesn't really say, but it just shows it in the manual. The guy just rolls it up off. And I want to get down in there. This is the... Alright, so that's the top cover off. I kind of slid it back, and then it's being held from swinging forward. These 2 studs there. So if you're looking down here, this is your shift fork, and it would slide. Should be in these detents here. That should be live PTO. This is neutral, and then up here would kick it back. Kick this gear back into here, and it would engage the ground drive. So that only moves when the when the axle's neutral would be here. So it's spinning, or it would just be free play. And that goes to the down under here. There's a drop down gearbox. You can see kind of down back there. That'll be the drop gearbox. Back there. Back under here. So there's a gear that's spinning the gear that's on here. That in turn spins this one down here. Back to here. I think someone really tried to strong arm this thing and yanked on this. This is, you kind of see from this angle, it's bent. I think it should be straight down. I'm not exactly sure, but I believe so. The other bad part, obvious, is the fork. The fork right here, it's all damaged from riding on this gear a little bit. It should be right in here, and it should ride right in there. Similar to this one, this is for the differential lock. It rides right in there, it can't come out. It won't go side to side. Someone must have really reeked on here, probably when the clutch lever was down and they were trying to put it into PTO, or the clutch brake wasn't working. So it looks like this is good. That's not worn out here, but the shift fork is bad. You can see it's all kind of swabbled out here. The beginning of these teeth is not that good, but I think it'll be all right. I might just file those clean, because the whole gear, when it slides up and over, it'll way overlap here. Yeah, it'll grab a hold. But what I gotta figure out now is how to get this shaft out so I get the shift fork off, and then this other lever's in the way. Just a roll pin here, so I can pound the roll pin in, and then, or out, because I pound it out, and then the shaft will come out this way. All right, after a little bit of fiddling here, kind of got an idea how this is working. So, like I said, I gotta remove that shaft there. And so I was looking around, just happens to be this little bolt was in here, and when I looked at the depth of it, it looked like it lined right up with that shaft, and so I guessed it was, and it's taper. Right there is where that bolt, I guess my hand was messing it up. That's where that bolt held the shaft from wobbling when the shifters were going. The only other thing is I thought it was just connected to this shift fork, except that shaft continues forward and connects to, this is the creeper gear right here. See, it's kind of moving. You can kind of see it moving both. The reason it's moving, the shaft is moving now, is because I have that bolt out. So that we'll slide this thing back aft, and I think there's enough room for it to come out before it hits the rear end. That is the hope, but my hopes could be dashed here. All right, after working at some, I was able to get the shift fork out for the creeper gear down here. And once I got it out, I realized that ball, when that ball came out, which I knew it would, it's so small down in this hole, there would be no way for me to be able to get that ball compressed and back in there. The other thing is, if we look back here, so my hopes was this shaft here, I was going to be able to back the shaft out. However, it hits this area here now. So I'm gonna have to get this out, I have to go forward with it. Meaning I have to split the tractor right here. The transmission and the engine will go forward, and then the rear end will go back, or technically the engine side's gonna stay, and we're gonna roll this one. back. So it's gonna be a lot more work, and I've never done it before, so we're gonna figure that out. All right, back to getting ready to separate the Kubota. Need to take the footwells off. Need to disconnect the brake linkage, and then the emergency parking brake will be disconnected. Just pull the cotter pins and pull the rod off. And then the wiring would normally be disconnected. I think we got enough slack. The previous owner rewired some of it, so that'll be pulled off. They'll give me a chance to get rid of some of the old wiring. Progress with the splitting, and it was a little bit confusing. We took the bolts out along here. I don't know how many, 10, 12 of them. I got 4-inch long bolts. The bolts that are in are only like 2 inches. I got 4-inch long ones. I cut the head off and put them in here, one on the opposite side. And that way it would guide it as it's coming open. One that I didn't know about is in the top here, going forward. All the rest of them are in the forward part going aft. There's two circle clips or lock rings, and we have to open these. One holds the bearing side in, and the other one holds the shift port gear. So they have to be removed. I didn't know that. So they have to be removed so that it'll slide out. This gear stays with the transmission. There is a dial pin on this corner, and there's one on the bottom corner on the opposite side. So when it does come time to line up, that'll help. I'm going to use these long bolts. They are fine thread, 12 millimeter fine thread, or extra fine, 1.25. So not always easy to find. I couldn't get it to separate. There was nowhere to put in. There was no area for jacking bolts. Of course, the oil's been drained. What I did was, oh, I didn't show you the jacking. So I have 2 jack stands on the front. I'm gonna back the rear end away. So I have a bottle jack. That's just to adjust any fine tuning, and I have a roller jack on the back that's gonna roll with the rear end to keep it from tottering, teetering, have the chain fall. So that's gonna keep it from going back. At least I hope so. What I did was I actually leaned my back up against the rear tire and pushed my feet against the forward tire. And since I have the front tires chopped, the back finally slid out. I was trying to hammer different stuff in, but I didn't want to mess up the flange space. So that's what did it. It just popped a little bit, and then once we got like a screwdriver, and then once it got, a 1/4 inch, then we used a couple pry bars and worked it back. So we're still gonna go. There's still gears meshing. We'll get those lock rings out and open up the rest of the way.
In this time lapse, you'll see my son and I taking out the old shift fork and rod and installing a new one. It takes us a little time to figure out how to get the spring and the ball to stay in, but we figure that out. And then there's a next little, after this, a small segment showing how we figure that out. It's a little bit poor quality, but it should work.
You have the socket in there holding the spot, make sure it doesn't fall out. You're going to use a screwdriver, pry down the ball that is in here, and you're going to slide a socket the same size as the hole in there, and that'll hold the position until we knock the rod that is supposed to go in it through it, and that'll pop the socket out and keep the ball in this position when the rod goes through. slap it on the ring. One. That, try it backwards. Bingo. Now we have the ball onto it. Now we gotta get it into one of the holes. Bingo. We're in.
I don't think so. Sorry. We can climb it.
We have put it all back together.
Look out here.
The trick to get this one in is you have to have this pushed all the way forward,
Back.
all the way back to the back of the tractor, and then have now which pulls this, you knock that rod forward, which gets it into the first detail.
Both the services for the flange, I'm just going to use Permatex Ultra Black. I put it on around all the holes. I have the what we use as dowel pins is 4-inch bolts with the heads cut off. We got those. So as we're pushing it in, we have to make sure we're lined up. Those are going to help us. And then there's the 2 tiles. But we got to make sure that this gear slides in this bearing hole here appropriately. And then this gear here has to mesh with this one. And then this gear here has to mess with the drive on the inside. So as we're pushing together, they have to all line up. So we're gonna get it as close as we can. We're gonna get these in, and as we're setting it, we can kind of manipulate certain gears as need be. All right, so we're back together now. One of the things we had to watch for lining up the splines and the gears wasn't that hard. They kind of come together a little bit. You could rock if you put the clutch lever up. You can rotate this shaft, which also loosens things up for rotating the gears down there to mesh with the 4-wheel drive gears. One thing though, for the PTO shaft, you have to make sure it's coming all the way in. It'll have a tendency to not want to make itself all the way in, which will leave too big of a gap here. It should only be just big enough to put a snap ring in. So as we were coming together, I could tell the shaft quit coming aft, although the halves were coming together. And so we had to use something to push the shaft that way it's not pushing wrong stuff and clutch housing. But once we got that, it slid together. Obviously we had to make sure our halves were lined up and not like that. But she came together pretty good. We just kind of grabbed the tire treads. I had help on the other side, and we just kind of pulled the tire treads together towards us and would shake the tractor a little bit, and it would kind of notch itself together. But one of the big things is lining up here. It's a really tight fit for this bearing and on this shaft, so it doesn't want to come through. So I had to make sure I wasn't pushing the bearing or keeping the shaft from coming through. Pump prime. All right, we're ready for PTO.
Thanks for watching.